It's a sound in your ear when nothing's there.
One high-pitched sort of in there, and it almost makes you lose your balance.
It's a hidden problem, which means that people can sometimes suffer in silence.
Tinnitus is on the rise in young people. Before, it was associated with old age, but as modern life gets noisier and we plug in more, our ears are paying the price, with 1.1 billion young people at risk of hearing loss. That's nearly 15% of the world's population.
Same with anyone that gets tinnitus, suddenly it becomes serious.
And it's not just our ears that are taking the hit.
People's fear is that tinnitus will drive them mad.
And once it's there, it could be there forever. Tinnitus. Hearing alarm bells. Never any peace and quiet. This is tinnitus. Because of wear and tear in the inner ear, the risk of hearing loss and tinnitus increases as you get older. But it's creeping into a younger generation. It sounds different to everyone, but is always a noise in your ear when there's no actual sound. Music producer Henry Murray from Bristol got tinnitus after a night out clubbing with his friends.
So for me, it's difficult really because tinnitus happened to me and then I don't remember what it was like to not have tinnitus, in that I was never aware of my hearing before then. So I was never aware of how fragile my hearing was until something was gone from my hearing. I am now constantly aware of my hearing. I'm aware of the frequencies in my environment. I'm aware of how harsh noise can be in certain spaces. And so for me, tinnitus on a day-to-day basis is I go to bed and I hear it, and I'm in a quiet place and I hear it. I get off my bike from the wind hitting my ears and I hear it. My girlfriend whispers in my ear, and I hear it. Things that are sensitive to my ears then remind me of the fact that I have tinnitus, that I have a specific frequency in my ear at all times. At first, it was more just so deeply unsettling. Whereas, I would be asleep and I would get anxious about the fact that this sound is not going away. It was like a harrowing change to my life. Like, oh my God, I've broken something that cannot be fixed. That was really hard. That took me a long time to get over. And because a lot of people don't have it, it's really hard to explain to them how life altering it has been.
So then, I'm just going to...
One person who regularly explains what tinnitus is ear, nose and throat surgeon Joseph Magnali, a specialist in hearing loss and ear disease.
Lovely. And your ears look really healthy. So tinnitus is essentially when you hear sound that isn't physically a sound that's there. But it can come in lots of different forms. So quite often tinnitus is associated with hearing loss. The two things go hand in hand. And it might be that someone has tinnitus actually as a result of an underlying hearing loss that they didn't know about. We know that prolonged exposure to loud noise or temporary exposure to very, very loud noises can cause irreversible hearing loss.
When the telly's going and there's no signal, it's like that, but I would say more of a tune to it. So it's got a note to it. And then sometimes I get one high-pitched sort of in there, and it almost makes you lose your balance.
Anne Savage has been a DJ for over 25 years. She was one of the first ever female music producers to hit the dance scene, and now campaigns to raise awareness in young people about the dangers of getting tinnitus in nightclubs.
So many people like me aren't even aware of how your ears were damaged. So I was just having music on full blast all day, practicing for my sets, not realizing that accumulative noise exposure all adds up. So it wasn't just the fact that I was in a noisy club DJing. It's in the day, in the car, having the music on full blast. And you get used to the noise when you sometimes come home and you get out, it's really loud because your ears accumulate to the noise. So it's just a series of things. And I've obviously with with the industry that I'm in, I'm exposed to loud music. So it wasn't one event.
Ear expert Dr. Priya Carling says she's seeing more and more young people in her clinic with tinnitus. Priya, can you tell us more?
You know, it's an extremely noisy world that we live in. And we know that younger people today are perhaps far more exposed to noise from various sources than ever before. So if we think about just socializing, going to noisy pubs and restaurants, that's giving us exposure. Some of us are using public transport, which can be very noisy, right? Trains and tubes can be extremely noisy. The entertainment we expose ourselves to in terms of gigs and festivals. There's so many now, and younger people are going more and more. And I think also sporting events. Sporting events can be extremely noisy.
And what are the most common causes of tinnitus in young people?
Perhaps the biggest overriding thing is the use of personal devices. So many young people are constantly on their smartphone, but they're using headphones, or they're using, the plugs, the earphones that it comes with, while they're traveling, while they're playing sport, while they're studying. So I think exposure is definitely the biggest factor at the moment.
So how much exposure are we getting in our daily lives? Sound is measured in decibels, and each increase of 10 decibels doubles how loud the sound is. A safe number of decibels is anything under 85. For example, a washing machine is 70 decibels. You can listen to this for as long as you like. A hairdryer comes in at 100, which means you can listen to it for about 15 minutes safely. And the World Health Organization has calculated that half of 12 to 35-year-olds listen to unsafe levels of sound through personal audio devices, such as using a smartphone with headphones. These can be as high as 110 decibels. They recommend listening at about 2/3 of the maximum volume of your phone.
The most important things about tinnitus and hearing loss, particularly hearing loss and tinnitus that's caused due to noise exposure, in whatever means, right, is that it's entirely preventable. And I think if we can focus on all the people that have a collective responsibility. So young people have a responsibility in being careful about how much they expose themselves, right? How loud they turn up the volume, how long they listen for. Are they taking breaks, right? When they go to gigs or doing anything excessively noisy, like maybe shooting firearms in a controlled environment as a sport or a hobby, or going to a gig, take breaks, use the correct personal protective equipment.
And say you've woken up after a gig and you've got a ringing in your ear that just lasts the day. Should you be worried then?
I think you should be worried even if it just lasts a day. Because even if it just lasts a day, what it's telling you is that you did some damage. But luckily, the fact that it stopped after a day means that whatever metabolic changes that happened, that caused the hair cells to get damaged a little bit, they've managed to recover. However, we know now that over a period of time, all those recoveries add up, and actually, that's how you end up with a more significant hearing loss at a later stage. If you are not recovering and the tinnitus is staying, it means you've done already a significant amount of damage. And so my advice would be, whether it lasts a day or half a day or 3 days, you are inflicting damage. It's completely preventable. Take the necessary precautions.
1.1 billion teenagers and young adults between 12 and 35 years old are at risk of developing hearing loss, according to the World Health Organization. This is because as modern technology gets louder, more and more young people are being exposed to unsafe decibel levels on personal audio devices and when going out. There are laws to protect workers from loud noise, but these don't apply to audiences. The Health and Safety Executive do have recommendations for audiences, but these are still above the decibel levels that the World Health Organization deems as safe. We contacted the Health and Safety Executive, but they were unavailable for comment. In loud places like clubs, where decibel levels might be unsafe, earplugs can help to reduce ear damage.
So I'm one of those people that brings a massive backpack for club night because I like bringing all the things that I might need. I always pack loads and loads of earplugs with me. So people who are really, really they can listen to loud music and it not be affecting them. Obviously, they'll know about it the next day. So often if I see people like that, I go, dude, I know you're wasted, but you need to put these in your ears. This sound level is really loud. My close friends are all really, really aware of of earplugs. They always bring earplugs, but for me, it's just when I see people who are in the club who are standing near the speakers who don't have earplugs in, I have it out of my bag and I just give it to them straight away. So you can benefit from extremely high levels of bass response, and it feels good without damaging your ears. And so that would become the norm if we had regulated club night culture in the UK. It would be the absolute norm that everyone wears earplugs all the time. And the way that you would do that initially is that you would start putting up very, very simple signs at the front entrance of the club. It doesn't need to be on the dance floor, but the front entrance of the club saying, you are entering a space with noise levels that are unsafe. And we are giving out free earplugs at the bar if you do not have them already.
Tinnitus is a condition with no cure, and while it's manageable for some people, like Henry, for others it's much more difficult, with research from the British Tinnitus Association reporting that 15% of people with tinnitus had experienced thoughts to end their life. Dr. Lawrence McKenna helps people deal with the emotional side of tinnitus.
Tinnitus perhaps causes people to feel unhappy, anxious, depressed, agitated, angry. People fear is that tinnitus will drive them mad. People will say, well, I'm struggling at the moment with this and I don't know how much longer I can go on struggling, and I'm feeling this anxiety, and it feels like I'm falling apart, and it feels like perhaps I'll go mad. People often don't quite know what the word means, or not necessarily using it in a technical term, but sometimes they see a kind of, that they conceive of a general kind of disintegration of the personality, a kind of rather Victorian or Hollywood image of lunacy or something like that, and that tends not to happen. I mean, I haven't seen that happen ever, actually. So anxiety is wretched, but it's not likely to lead to those sorts of processes.
Ben got tinnitus in his early 20s and found it overwhelming at first. Ben, how did it feel in the beginning?
Yeah, it used to really bother me for a couple of years. Also, it just wasn't very nice. So I guess I started to panic, and I was researching a lot and silly things like massaging my ear and just trying to understand physically what it might be. And eventually just concluded that it was too far in. It's obviously coming from deep inside the ear or the brain or something. So then I stopped doing that. But because I was not accepting it, it was a far bigger psychological issue. So I'd kind of look for it. If there was a relatively low noise bed and I was somewhere, I might try and hear it to check if it was still going on, because I was obsessing about it like that.
And how did you go from feeling really stressed about it to feeling okay?
Just gradually building up a picture of what it was in my own way without necessarily looking for advice. Just, I guess, getting a bit more personal with it and learning what it was and how I could manage it. And it just took a lot of time. And now at this point, I feel quite in control of it because I believe that it's not going to get any worse, because I know the things that make it worse and I avoid them. And that's why these days I feel okay about it. So that would be, if someone had just discovered that they have it, that would be what I'd want them to hear, I think.
While some people, like Ben, can cope with their tinnitus without it, others need psychological support. One of the techniques that Dr. Lawrence McKenna practices is mindfulness-based cognitive therapy.
So sitting with their tinnitus, not escaping it, not having to fight it, not having to do anything to combat it or remove it. And the outcomes of that seem to be very successful for a lot of people.
Until a cure for tinnitus is found, all the people we've spoken to in our research say that the best way to stop it is prevention.
The future is destigmatizing hearing loss and tinnitus.
People don't know what they have until it's gone. People don't know how sensitive their hearing is until part of it breaks.
tinnitus is a lot less cool than wearing earplugs. So wear earplugs. There's a whole stigma around wearing earplugs, and you just think it's never going to happen to you, don't you, when you're young? And unfortunately it will. So look after your ears.
As modern life continues to get louder, we're at greater risk of developing a lifelong ringing in our ears. But it is preventable. Whether it's using earplugs in a club or turning the volume down on your phone or in the car, there are ways to enjoy music without damaging our hearing.